Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here, and we are back with the next tier list or meta update video for the new rotation, so to speak, or the new arena season. But before we talk about that, I just want to really quickly give an update on the retire queue, or the barcode queue as some people call it. Yes, it is live as far as we can tell, and Blizzard's confirmed it's live, and there have been people complaining about it being impacted by it, so we'll get into that in a second. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'd recommend going to my previous video where I was talking about it. I won't repeat everything that's in that video, but the short of it is that if you retire too much, yes, you will be put into a separate queue with other players engaging in the same play style as you. And so there are 2 points. The first one I want to address is that I've noticed some comments, not actually in my channels, but just in other channels, where people asking like, why should we trust this guy? We don't like that guy here. And like, what's your source that Blizzard talked to you for? So I probably should have mentioned this in the earlier video. This is part of the creator program that some of us content creators are a part of. If you go to any other creator, but anyone that touches Arena in the creator program, they will also confirm the exact same thing. This is stuff that they told us that we are allowed to talk about. So you can ask any of them if you want to, you'll hear the exact same thing. Blizzard has told us they will make an official post at some point in the future, but they just wanted us to kind of get the word out by word of mouth first before that actually happens. The other point I want to mention is just that I have been hearing some complaints, again, mostly in other places, of people getting impacted by the retire queue. Essentially people that didn't think they were, they're like, I'm not a barcode, so I shouldn't be in the queue. Well, they've been finding out that some of them actually are getting into the queue. Basically, we don't know what the exact criteria is, but if you retire too much, you're going to get into the queue. And you'll probably know it's in the queue because, at least as of yesterday when I heard people complaining about it, they were getting like 10-minute queues, really long queues, because there just weren't a lot of people there. So it's just a warning. You might want to be a little bit careful if you're someone who retires sometimes. You might not want to retire so much unless you really need to. Again, a retire every once in a while should not impact you, but you might want to be a little bit careful about that just to make sure you don't get caught in that situation. But with that, let's get into the actual video about the meta updates. So I know it's very, very early in this meta. Normally I would wait quite a bit longer to actually make a video about the balance of the meta, but from all accounts I've seen, very little has actually changed with this rotation. It's a little surprising they even bothered to flip the season with how little has actually changed. It's like, we're talking like maybe 90-95% or even more of the cards are exactly the same. Basically just a few cards got swapped in and out here or there. For example, like Mage got like their mech cards, I think, from Sunken City, and maybe, there's some neutrals changed. I don't know what rotated out. It's hard to see that stuff so early. So not much has changed with this specific change. However, it's still a good time for me to make this video because I'm a little bit behind on making a meta update video. There have been a lot of small changes that have been happening over the last month, so I think it's a good time to talk about that because things will be moved a little bit from where it was before. So let's jump right into that with the first change impacted by one of the most recent, well, actually the most recent patch change, and that is to Demon Hunter, because Demon Hunter would have been, I don't know if it would have been worth putting him into S tier recently. They would have been like a borderline of S tier and A tier, but Demon Hunter did have an impact from the most recent patch, and that was the nerf of Umpire's Grasp, getting nerfed from 3 mana to 4 mana here. So it's not the biggest change, it's still a good card, I would say, but it's not what it is. It does impact it, so with that, we're definitely going to say that Demon Hunter is going to fall into the A tier. And with that, let's not bury the lead too much. Let's talk about the other classes that will be joining it into the A tier. There will be 2 of them. The first one is going to be Shaman. Again, Shaman, I guess I'm not going to repeat this over and over, but every class is essentially doing the same thing. I don't actually know exactly what cards have changed. Maybe I'll make a follow-up video if I actually figure that out. It's just really hard to actually figure that out right now, but they still do the same kind of things. Elementals, they have a lot of good spells. They have a lot of healing as well. They're doing all the same stuff. So Shaman is still very, very good. And the last class that is still very, very good, of course, is going to be Death Knight. Death Knight, again, doing the exact same thing. I'm just not going to keep repeating myself. But yeah, my one advice with Death Knight, I will say, though, is that the best rune combinations you want to go is Rainbow is really good, one of each rune type, if you're not familiar with that term. But also, I think, generally speaking, you're going to have a good time as long as you have a Frost rune and a Blood rune. Those are the most important ones. The Unholy one's a little bit less important, but that means you can still go double Frost. You can actually go triple Frost as well. You can go triple Blood as well. I think it's actually not that bad. It's a lot better than it has been in certain times in the past. but I do think it's optimal to especially have a Frost and a Blood Rune. So let us jump to the bottom actually and talk about some of the worst classes in this meta. And it's worth saying, you know, since the more recent balance change they made, I don't know, what was that, like 3 weeks ago at this point? Everything's like relatively close. The meta is relatively balanced. It's not like these classes at the bottom are unpickable. You can definitely get good decks with these classes if you get the key legendaries. And I'll talk about what the key legendaries are for each of these classes. So the first one's going to be Priest, and Priest, their big legendary is Zarimi, the dragon that lets you take an extra turn, and especially because you can take the 6-drop dragon that is 4 dragons in one. That one finishes the whole quest basically by itself. Same thing that Zarimi Priest does in Constructed, right? You're doing the same idea. And Priest has, you know, a decent amount of tools. It's just they don't get them at the same frequency, the same power level of tools as some of the other classes. Next one here is Druid. They have, I mean, there's a lot of things going for them. Obviously, Rheostraza is the big legendary you would like to hit, but you just don't always hit it, and you might have a rough time in longer games if you don't. And as well, Druid can have trouble getting to the late games because they have Spawn of Onyxia on turn 7. Is that the name of the card? Something like that. Something of Onyxia. Swarm Onyxia? I don't know. As well, that's one of the big problems with Druid is just that if you ever fall behind, you're going to have, which you can't help a lot of the time, you're going to have problems because you might just have, people can put out boards that you just aren't able to deal with, so that's a thing. And the last class in the D tier is going to be Rogue. Rogue was heavily impacted by the effective nerf to Discover through just having the wild card pool be in the game, impacting Discover specifically. So Rogue was always very dependent on those Discovers, but they're just a lot weaker than they were, so that's really hurt Rogue. Again, still playable, but it's definitely at the bottom of this list. And with that, let's jump up back to the B tier. And the B tier, it's going to be just one class, and that's a class that used to be up in the S tier at the beginning of last meta. Hunter. I guess I didn't make a video about this, but Hunter had their Wild Seeds taken out. And that was one of the huge things. You know, Wild Seeds into RC Rampage was huge. They still, I do believe, still have RC Rampage and Buzzard and a lot of the other stuff. They also lost the 1-mana spell that gives you things that used to be 4/1s, which was nerfed to 3/1s anyway. That card was taken away as well, so they lost some of their tools with that change, but you know, they're still one of the better classes, just not at the same level consistency-wise as some of the other classes. And with that, I guess there's only one tier left, so we can talk about all of these at the same time. The last 4 classes are going to be Warlock and Warrior and Mage and Paladin. So these are all decently playable, but again, they're just not at the same consistency and power level as some of the other classes. I will say for me, I've had surprisingly good results with Warlock specifically. Like, I would personally put Warlock at a higher tier, but in addition to that, if you're going for more of a high roll, if you want to get like a 12-win run, you're probably gonna get the best results out of either Warlock or Warrior, I would say. There's just a lot more high rolls you can go for, especially with Warlock. If you get like the hero card that with big demon synergy, there's a lot of crazy stuff you can do. And Warrior has like rifts and a lot of, you know, still a lot of the taunt synergy, death rattle synergy. There's a lot of stuff you can high roll in Warrior as well. Mage definitely has some good things, but the best legendary you can get, I think, is the Wisdom Ball, and that doesn't always do exactly what you want it to. And Paladin still has some good tools, although the nerfs that happened for them in Standard, especially like the plushie nerf, for example, just impacted Paladin a bit more, because I think Paladin used to be, is definitely in B tier, might have been in A tier, but yeah, they were hit a little bit mainly just by those standard changes. So with that, that is it for this meta update and for this update on the retire queue or the barcode queue as well. So with that, let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you guys all hanging out. Hit the like button, subscribe button, all these things if you want to support the channel. Of course, I very much appreciate that. As always, appreciate you guys hanging out to the end as well. Thanks a lot. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.